Elena Voss kept her eyes on the floor of Trauma Bay 4 when Dr. Victor Lang's voice cut across the entire night shift like a scalpel. "You're a liability here. Take your lunchbox and clock out." 23 people heard it. A resident laughed. 2 techs exchanged glances. Lang stood there in his crisp white coat, Italian leather shoes spotless even at 2:14 a.m., the thin gold Patek on his wrist catching the fluorescent glare.
Elena's shoulders curved a fraction tighter.
Her fingers found the worn silver dog tag beneath her scrubs and held it once, then let it drop again. She had no idea the man she had just saved from total airway collapse on that corner stretcher was the only reason the Federal Trauma Network still existed. 6 months later, her name would be spoken in the same auditorium where Lang once humiliated her. And his would be the one no one remembered. Lakeshore Memorial sat 12 blocks from the river on Chicago's near west side. The wind off the water smelled of diesel and coming rain every time the ambulance bay doors hissed open. Victor Lang did not forgive weakness. He corrected it loudly, often, and always where witnesses could see. Elena Voss had learned that lesson 3 times in the last 5 days. Monday, he had ripped apart her dosage note in front of 2 first-year residents, even though her math had been flawless. Wednesday, he had reassigned her the overflow bay reserved for the uninsured because, he said, it matched her pace. And tonight, he had ended her shift with that single sentence that still hung in the air like smoke. She said nothing. She had learned to say nothing. At 38, she was a single mother raising Sophie on $41,000 a year, living in a second-floor walk-up on 18th and Halsted, driving a Civic whose odometer rolled past 187,000 miles the week before. The staff saw a quiet woman who kept her head down, refilled carts without being asked, and never met anyone's eyes longer than necessary. What none of them knew was that those same hands had once flown 287 combat missions out of Bagram and Kandahar. What none of them knew was that the woman they called Slow had once answered to the callsign Raven, a name that made hardened operators stop talking when it came across the radio. Day 1, 2:47 a.m. The ER that night was already coming apart at the seams. A multi-car pileup on the Eisenhower had pushed 19 patients through the doors in 43 minutes. Monitors screamed. Orders overlapped. Lang moved through the chaos like a man performing for an invisible audience. Voice loud, corrections sharp. Elena worked the far corner where a quiet federal transfer had been left almost as an afterthought. No name on the board. Just a bed number and a red sticker that read minimal interaction. The patient was a big man, early 40s, ribs taped, shoulder wrapped. Vitals looked stable enough that 2 nurses had already walked past him twice. Elena almost did the same. Then she heard it. Not a gasp, not a cough. A silence that did not belong inside a living chest. She turned before her brain caught up. That exact silence lived in her memory from back seats of speeding MRAPs, from stairwells in villages whose names were still redacted, from nights when the only sound that mattered was the one that suddenly stopped. His lips were already shifting from pink to the color of old concrete. His chest lay perfectly still. No alarm had triggered. In the roar of the pileup, the silence had simply been swallowed. Elena's hands stopped trembling. She stepped behind the stretcher, wrapped her arms around his torso, and found the exact spot just above the navel with a certainty that had nothing to do with Lakeshore Memorial training. Fist formed. Second hand locked over it. 1 foot forward for leverage. First thrust. Nothing. She adjusted half an inch higher, jaw tight, breathing controlled, and drove again. Harder. On the 3rd thrust, the man's body jerked forward and a small hard object shot from his mouth, clattering across the floor like a spent shell casing. His chest heaved once, violently, pulling air so deep the sound echoed off the tiles. Color flooded back into his face in real time. The entire bay went dead quiet in a new way. Lang stood frozen near the nurse's station, chart still open in his hand, mouth slightly parted. 2 residents stared at Elena like they had never seen her before. The patient blinked up at the ceiling, then at the small woman still braced behind him, arms still locked around his ribs. He lifted one shaky hand toward his own throat, then toward her, as if to confirm the impossible had just happened. Elena straightened, reached for the call button, and rattled off vitals and instructions in a clipped, steady voice that sounded nothing like the woman they thought they knew. Her hands, which had wrapped a dying man's torso 30 seconds earlier, were perfectly still. Nobody spoke for several long seconds. Lang finally managed words. They came out sharper than he intended. "You never even looked at me." Elena thought about every hallway correction, every public dressing down, every time he had made her feel small enough to vanish. What she said out loud was simpler. He wasn't getting air. Now he is. The next minutes blurred into protocol. Monitors arrived. Oxygen hissed. A respiratory tech showed up 3 minutes too late to matter. Someone paged the on-call attending. Elena worked through it all with the same efficient calm, checking pupils' pulse, the small piece of candy now sitting in a plastic basin. It had been meant to keep his mouth moist during transport. Small enough to kill him. Word moved faster than any page. By the time she finished her chart, 3 separate nurses had found excuses to walk past the bay just to look at her. A young tech named Jamal, barely a year out of school, caught her near the supply closet. "That was insane," he whispered. "I've practiced the maneuver on the dummy 100 times. You didn't even blink." "Training kicks in," she said, offering the small, tired smile she had perfected over 18 months of making herself smaller. Jamal didn't look convinced, but he let it drop. Most of them would. Lang spent the rest of his shift unusually quiet. He took the long way around the nurses' station. He signed charts without commentary. The hierarchy he had built his entire identity on had just refused to hold its shape. Elena almost convinced herself the night might simply become exaggerated gossip and nothing more. She was wrong. Day 3, 11:12 p.m. 3 nights later, the federal team arrived 47 minutes after shift change. 3 men in plain clothes moved through the ambulance bay with the kind of quiet authority that made security step aside without being asked. The one in front was lean, late 30s, wearing scuffed tactical boots that had seen real miles. His name, according to the minimal paperwork, was Reyes. He found the patient, now identified as Kane, sitting up and arguing with a nurse about discharge. Kane looked at Reyes, exhaled something close to a laugh, and gripped his uninjured shoulder. "Ask her," Kane rasped, nodding toward the hallway where Elena stood updating a chart, shoulders already curved again, eyes low. Reyes studied her the way operators study things.
Petite frame.
Navy scrubs 1 size too big. Hair slipping from a ponytail that had surrendered hours ago. Nothing about her looked remarkable. That was exactly why he kept looking. He walked over, stopped just inside her line of sight, and asked the only question that mattered. "What did you do back there?" "Standard abdominal thrusts," she answered, still writing. "He's stable now." Reyes didn't move. "That's not what I'm asking. I'm asking who taught you to move like that with zero hesitation while a senior attending stood there doing nothing." Elena's pen paused for half a second, then kept moving. "Nursing school." Reyes almost smiled. "Those aren't nursing school hands. I've seen that exact set of movements exactly twice. Once in a dust-off outside Kandahar. Once tonight." Elena finally looked up. Something old and careful flickered behind her eyes, then vanished. "I need to finish this chart." She walked away before he could ask anything else. Reyes watched her go, arms crossed, already certain of something he had no proof for yet. 19 hours until the next shift. Elena drove home on 18th and Halstead with the Civic's engine ticking at every red light. The apartment smelled of yesterday's spaghetti and the faint strawberry shampoo Sophie used. Her 10-year-old daughter was already asleep, a half-finished science fair volcano on the kitchen table costing $87 in supplies Elena had counted twice. She sat on the edge of the couch, fingers tracing the worn silver dog tag again, the metal warm from her skin. The same tag that had once bounced against body armor at 10,000 feet now rested against plain blue scrubs. Same hands. Different war. Day 4. 3:06 a.m. The grind had already started again. Lang assigned her the worst bays, the ones with the leaking sinks and the flickering lights. At 11:47 p.m. the night before, he had mocked her charting speed in front of 3 residents. Voice carrying down the corridor like a whip. Try keeping up with the rest of the team, Voss. Some of us actually treat patients, not just stand there. The residents had chuckled the way people do when the boss draws blood. Elena had simply nodded, fingers finding the dog tag beneath her collar, and kept writing. She absorbed it. She always absorbed it. The rent was due in 9 days. Sophie needed new shoes for the science fair presentation. The Civic had needed brakes 2 months ago, but the small private reversal 3 weeks earlier still lived in her chest like a secret coal. That night, the crash cart had failed in Bay 2. A 2-year-old girl coding from a sudden fever seizure. Pads on, charge button pressed, and nothing. The defibrillator sat dead. The on-duty resident froze, hands shaking above the tiny chest. Elena moved without permission. She popped the casing in under 90 seconds using a bypass sequence no civilian manual listed, the one taught in a converted shipping container outside Kabul in 2012. Capacitors whined back to life. She delivered the shock herself. The toddler's rhythm snapped back on the second attempt. The residents stared at her, eyes wide in the dimmed lights. "How did you? Promise me you stay silent," Elena said, voice low, already sliding the dog tag back under her scrubs. "This never happened." He nodded once, too stunned to argue. She walked away before the attending arrived, the faint smell of singed plastic still on her fingertips. That same instinct now kept her scanning exits during every 3 a.m. coffee break. She caught the scent of gun oil on Rhea's coat one night when he passed too close in the stairwell. The net was tightening. Kane's teammates kept showing up with questions wrapped in small talk. Background checks had already returned the mundane record: DePaul nursing degree, 2016, 2 quiet years at a suburban clinic. Nothing more. Exactly as she had built it. Yet every time she closed her eyes in the break room, she heard rotor blades and the crack of small arms fire. Kandahar never really left. It only waited for the right kind of silence to wake it up. Day 7. 41 hours until the scheduled federal review. The worst bay again. A father watching his son get in 4 while Lang stood 3 feet away. "Redo it, Voss. That vein is rolling." Again. She started over 4 times. The father shifted uncomfortably. The boy cried. Elena's hands stayed steady, the dog tag a small weight against her sternum. She finished on the 5th try, perfect flash of blood in the chamber, and stepped back without a word. Lang walked away satisfied. The father offered her a quiet thank you when no one was looking. Sophie's science fair project waited at home with another $12 of poster board still needed. Elena kept her past buried. She kept her head down. But Kane was whispering now. In his guarded room on the 6th floor, he told Reyes, the small woman whose hands never shook had moved like someone who had done it under fire. He wanted her name. He wanted the story. The questions were getting louder. And the silence that had almost killed him was starting to echo through the entire hospital like a countdown no one else could hear. Day 8. 34 hours until the scheduled federal review. Elena pushed through the double doors of the supply closet at 4:17 a.m., the overhead bulb flickering once before settling into a sickly yellow hum. Her scrubs still carried the faint antiseptic sting from the last code blue. She counted syringes by feel, the plastic clicking softly against her palm, when the door clicked shut behind her. Reyes leaned against the metal shelving, arms folded, the faint leather creak of his shoulder holster audible in the tight space. "You're good with a needle, Voss. Real good. Almost too good for someone who's only been pushing beds for 2 years." Elena didn't look up. She kept counting. "Practice," she said flatly. "Practice under fire?" Reyes's voice dropped. "Kane's been talking. Says the way you moved in that bay yesterday. Looked like someone who'd stabilized a casualty with tracers stitching the dirt 10 feet away. She closed the drawer. The dog tag shifted against her skin, warm now from body heat. A small rectangle of metal that had once been caked in Afghan dust. She felt its edge press like a reminder she didn't want. People see what they want to see, officer. Reyes studied her for 3 long seconds. The smell of gun oil stronger now, mixed with the sterile chill of the closet. Then he stepped aside. Federal Review Board flies in tomorrow night. They're looking for gaps. You might want to make sure there aren't any. He left the door open behind him. Elena waited until his footsteps faded down the corridor before she let her shoulders drop. The fluorescent lights buzzed louder in the sudden quiet. She pulled the dog tag out just enough to read the etched letters. Vas E. 287 missions. She tucked it away again, the chain cool against her collarbone. Day 9. 27 hours to the review. The hospital cafeteria at 6:42 a.m. smelled of burnt coffee and industrial eggs. Elena sat alone at the far table near the trash bins, spooning oatmeal that tasted like paste. Sophie's text glowed on her phone. *Mom, the poster board is wrinkled. Can we fix it tonight? $12. Another 12 she didn't have after the rent hike. Lang appeared without warning, sliding into the seat across from her. His white coat was starched to perfection, monogrammed cuffs catching the light. A Patek Philippe peeked from his left wrist, the second hand ticking like a metronome of superiority. Vas, I've been thinking about yesterday's 4 fiasco. The father complained. Said you made his son cry 4 times. Elena kept her eyes on her bowl. The oatmeal had gone cold. I finished the line, Dr. Lang. On the 5th attempt. That's not efficiency. That's incompetence wearing a scrub's top. He leaned in, voice silky. The review board arrives tomorrow. If I see one more hesitation from you, I'll recommend you be removed from patient-facing duties permanently. We don't need dead weight when federal eyes are watching. He stood, adjusted his tie, and left the table without another word. The cafeteria noise rushed back in, clatter of trays, distant paging for Dr. Patel. Elena's spoon trembled once against the rim of the bowl before she stilled it. She slipped her hand beneath her collar, fingers brushing the dog tag. The metal was warmer now, almost alive. She stood, dumped the rest of the oatmeal, and walked out. Day 10. 19 hours to the review. The worst bay again. This time it was a construction worker with a crushed hand, blood soaking through the temporary tourniquet. The man screamed every time anyone touched him. Lang observed from the doorway, arms crossed, Italian loafers spotless against the linoleum. Vas, you're primary. Show us how it's done. Elena's hands moved on autopilot. She cut the shirt away, the rip of fabric loud in the bay. The smell of iron and fierce sweat filled the air. The man's eyes locked on hers, wide and pleading. Stay with me, she whispered, voice low enough only he could hear. I've done this with worse than this. Just breathe on my count. She started an 18 gauge in the left antecubital, one smooth motion. Flash, tape, saline wide open. The screaming faded to ragged gasps. Lang's eyebrows rose a fraction, but he said nothing. Later, in the supply room, the construction worker's wife caught Elena alone. She pressed a crumpled 20 into her palm. For whatever you said to him, he calmed down the second you spoke. Thank you. Elena tried to refuse. The woman wouldn't hear it.
$20.
Poster board money. She folded the bill into her pocket next to the dog tag chain that had slipped out during the code. The metal caught the light for half a second before she hit it again. But Kane had seen. From his bed on the 6th floor, he watched the hallway camera feed on a borrowed tablet. Reyes stood beside him, silent. That's not a nurse, Kane said, voice still hoarse from the tube they'd pulled 2 days earlier. That's a goddamn operator. The way she talked him down, I heard that tone in Hellmand. Exact same cadence. Reyes rubbed his jaw. Background still reads clean. DePaul, 2016. Quiet life. Kane's laugh turned into a cough. Clean on paper. But that tag she keeps touching? I saw it when her collar shifted. Same make as mine. Same wear pattern. She's one of us. Or she was. Day 11. 14 hours until the federal team lands at O'Hare. Elena's apartment smelled of cheap crayons and reheated pasta. Sophie sat at the kitchen table at 8:19 p.m., gluing the last foam letters onto the wrinkled poster board. The 20 had bought the exact color blue her project needed. Elena watched her daughter from the doorway, the dog tag now resting on the counter beside a half-drunk cup of tea. She had taken it off for the first time in weeks, the chain coiled like a sleeping snake. A knock at the door made her freeze. She moved to the peephole. Reyes stood in the hallway, out of uniform, holding a manila folder. His face was unreadable. Elena opened the door 6 inches, body blocking the gap. Whatever this is, it can wait until morning. Reyes held up the folder. This can't. Kane asked me to run a deeper check. Not the hospital one. The real one. Elena's pulse thudded in her ears. The scent of gun oil drifted in from his jacket again. I don't know what you think you're digging up, but callsign ghost, Reyes said quietly. 287 missions. The after-action report on the Kandahar extraction that went sideways in 2014. The one where Captain Elena Voss carried 2 wounded Marines 3 clicks through hostile territory with a fractured tibia and 0 comms. That Elena Voss. The folder stayed between them like a live grenade. Sophie's voice floated from the kitchen. Mom? Who is it? Elena stepped into the hallway, pulling the door almost closed behind her. The dog tag lay forgotten on the counter inside, catching the light from the hallway fixture through the narrow opening. She met Reyes's eyes. You're going to get someone killed if you keep pushing this. Reyes didn't blink. The review board tomorrow isn't just about Kane's case anymore. Lang's already submitted a supplemental file. Claims the nursing staff has been compromised by unvetted personnel with suspicious skill sets. He named you specifically. Says your hands are too steady. Your decisions too precise. He wants you gone before the feds even sit down. Elena's jaw tightened. The hallway lights buzzed overhead, the same sickly yellow as the supply closet. Reyes lowered the folder. Kane doesn't want you gone. He wants the truth. And between us, so do I. Because if what I think happened in that bay is true, this hospital is about to lose the only person who can keep it standing when the real storm hits. He turned to leave, then paused. Day 12 starts in 4 hours, Voss. Federal team touches down at 0900. You might want to decide what story you're telling before they ask the questions Lang already wrote down for them. The elevator dinged at the end of the hall. Elena stepped back inside, closed the door, and leaned against it. Her breathing was the only sound. Sophie appeared in the kitchen doorway, poster board in hand, a streak of blue glitter on her cheek. Mom? You okay? You look like you saw a ghost. Elena forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She crossed the room, picked up the dog tag from the counter, and slipped the chain back over her head. The metal settled against her sternum like an old friend returning from war. I'm fine, baby. Just an old story that won't stay buried. She kissed the top of Sophie's head, the scent of strawberry shampoo cutting through the tension like a small mercy. Then she sat down at the table and helped glue the final letter onto the board. Day 12. 9 hours until the federal review begins. The hospital parking garage at 5:53 a.m. was still dark, concrete echoing with the drip of last night's rain. Elena sat behind the wheel of her 8-year-old Civic, engine off, watching the rearview mirror. Headlights swept across the ramp. A black SUV slowed, then parked 2 rows over. Lang stepped out, phone pressed to his ear, voice carrying in the quiet. Yes, I'm telling you she's a liability. The steadiness under pressure is unnatural. I have statements. I have the supplemental. By the time the board convenes at 2 o'clock this afternoon, her badge will be in my desk drawer. He clicked off the call. The Italian shoes clicked across the oil-stained floor as he headed for the stairwell. Elena waited until the door slammed shut behind him. Then she pulled the dog tag out, running her thumb over the etched name the way she had done in a dozen desert foxholes. The metal was dull now, scarred, but the weight felt different today. Heavier, like it carried every mission, every silence, every time she had let someone like Lang walk away thinking they were untouchable. She started the car. The engine coughed once, then caught. Kane's room on the 6th floor was bathed in the thin gray light of dawn when she arrived. He was sitting up, the first time she'd seen him vertical. Reyes stood by the window, arms folded. Elena didn't knock. She walked in and placed a fresh 4-bag on the bedside table with deliberate calm. "You wanted the story," she said, voice low. "You get one piece of it. Then you both stop digging. Because if the wrong people hear the rest, Sophie loses more than poster board money. She loses the only parent she has left." Kane studied her, eyes sharp despite the pain still etched in his face. "Ghost," he said simply. Elena's fingers brushed the dog tag through her scrubs. "Day 12, she answered. "And the clock's still running." The hallway outside filled with the sound of early rounds, carts rattling, voices calling for lab results. Somewhere on the 3rd floor, Lang was already sharpening his knife for the afternoon board meeting. Elena felt the familiar itch between her shoulder blades, the one that used to mean rotors spinning up and sand kicking into the air. But this time the battlefield was linoleum and fluorescent lights, and the enemy wore a Patek Philippe and starched white coats. She turned to leave the room when Kane's voice stopped her. "Voss." She paused in the doorway. "Whatever you were, thank you. For the other night, I felt it. The way you talked me through it. Same voice I heard on the radio once. Different call sign. Same calm." Elena didn't answer. She simply touched the dog tag one more time, the metal warm and solid, then walked into the corridor where the next mini-crisis was already waiting in Bay 4. A mother in early labor, Lang hovering nearby, stopwatch in hand, ready to document every perceived hesitation. The countdown continued. 11 hours left, and the silence that had protected her for 6 years was cracking wider with every passing minute. The mother in Bay 4 was already screaming between contractions, her grip white-knuckled on the bed rail. Lang stood 2 feet away in his spotless white coat, Patek glinting under the overheads like a threat. "Nurse Voss, if you can't get in 4 started in under 90 seconds, I will have it documented as incompetence," he said, voice clipped for the 2 residents hovering behind him. "This is a teaching hospital, not a charity ward." Elena didn't look at him. She felt the dog tag shift against her sternum as she leaned in, voice steady against the woman's ear. "Breathe with me, Maria. In through the nose, out through the mouth. I've got you." The needle slid home on the first try. The monitor's tone flattened into a healthy rhythm. Maria's shoulders dropped half an inch. Lang's stopwatch beeped at 1 minute 12. He frowned, wrote something on his clipboard, and moved on without another word. Day 13. Elena clocked out at 7:14 a.m. with the taste of burnt hospital coffee still on her tongue. She drove the rattling Civic straight to the storage unit on Industrial Boulevard, the one she paid cash for every month under a name that wasn't Voss. The roll-up door rattled upward. Inside sat the same locked footlocker she hadn't opened in 6 years. She knelt, fingers brushing the faded stencil on the lid. "Voss," then pulled the dog tag free from beneath her shirt and laid it on top like a key she wasn't ready to turn. The auction was now 10 days away. She spent the next 6 hours at the kitchen table of her tiny apartment, Sophie's half-finished science fair poster curled at the edges beside her. Elena cross-referenced public filings, old NTSB reports, and 3 different shell company registries. Every time her phone buzzed with a hospital text, she felt the itch between her shoulder blades again. By midnight, the table was covered in printouts. At 2:14 a.m., she found the first thread that mattered. A $4.7 million transfer routed through a Cayman account the week before the clinic's funding dried up. The signature on the wire was Lang's. She folded the page once, slid it beneath the dog tag, and let the metal weight it down like an anchor. Day 14. Sophie woke her at 6:05 with a glass of orange juice and a worried smile. "You didn't sleep again." Elena ruffled her daughter's hair, the same color as the desert sand she used to fly over, and made pancakes shaped like helicopters. They ate in silence while the morning news played low. When Sophie left for the bus, Elena touched the dog tag through her hoodie and whispered the only promise she still believed in. "Not this time, kiddo." At 8:40, she was back on the floor. A new mini-crisis waited in the trauma bay, multi-car pileup on the interstate, 3 criticals, 1 pediatric. Lang had rotated himself into the lead attending slot. He barked orders like he was conducting an orchestra no one else could hear. When the 8-year-old coded, Elena moved without thinking. Chest compressions, 200 per minute, the same rhythm she used to count rotors on approach. She called the dosages before Lang could open his mouth. The boy's pulse returned at 9:03. The mother collapsed against the wall in grateful sobs. Lang stood frozen for 3 full seconds, then muttered, "Adequate response," and walked out. But his eyes had changed. Recognition. The kind that doesn't let go. 9 days until the auction. That afternoon, Kane found her in the staff lounge, moving slow but upright, one hand pressed to the fresh stitches under his gown. He dropped a folded napkin on the table between them. On it, in ballpoint, was a single call sign she hadn't heard in half a decade. "Spectre Actual." "I kept the radio logs," he said quietly. 287 missions. You pulled my platoon out of Helmand in 14. Different voice on the SATCOM that night, but same calm. Same pauses between instructions. "You're her." Elena stared at the napkin. The same one she'd once used to scribble grid coordinates for a medevac. She picked it up, fingers brushing the dog tag again, and slipped both into her pocket. "You tell anyone and Sophie becomes leverage," she said, voice barely above the hum of the vending machines. Kane nodded once. "I'm not here to burn you, Voss. I'm here because the board meeting tomorrow is going to table the entire pediatric wing unless someone shows them the real books. Lang's been cooking the numbers for 18 months. I've seen the discrepancies, but I don't have the clearance to prove it." Elena let the silence stretch until the lounge clock ticked past 3 p.m. "Day 15 tomorrow," she said. "Meet me at the storage unit on Industrial at 2200. Bring whatever you have. And Kane, leave the reporter hat in the car." He gave a ghost of a salute and limped away. The rest of her shift blurred. For more codes, 2 discharges. One quiet moment in the chapel where she sat on a hard wooden pew and let the dog tag rest against her lips like a prayer. The metal still carried the faint smell of jet fuel and sand no soap had ever quite removed. 8 days left. That night, the Civic's engine coughed harder than usual on the way home. She pulled into the apartment complex at 11:47 and found a brand new Mercedes parked directly in her assigned spot. Lang stepped out of the driver's side wearing a Brioni suit instead of scrubs, the Patek catching the streetlight like a blade. "Elena Voss," he said, using her real first name for the first time. Or should I say Lieutenant Commander Elena Voss, callsign Ghost, retired with enough classified commendations to paper the entire executive boardroom. Funny how certain names surface when you start looking at old wire transfers. Her stomach tightened, but her face stayed stone. Lang continued, softer now, almost regretful. "I don't want to destroy you. I want the clinic solvent. The board is about to vote on selling the pediatric wing to a for-profit group. My group. If you stay quiet, Sophie keeps her scholarship and her poster board dreams. If you push, well, 6 years is a long time to hide. One phone call and it all comes apart." He placed a single business card on the hood of her Civic. Gold embossed. Then he drove off, taillights bleeding red across wet asphalt. Elena stood there until the cold seeped through her sneakers. She picked up the card, folded it once, and slid it beneath the dog tag next to the old napkin. The metal felt heavier than it had in years. 7 days until the auction. The next morning, day 16. She woke to Sophie already dressed for school, backpack slung over one shoulder, holding the half-finished poster like a shield. "Mom, the glue won't stick, and the judge said we need real data, not just pictures." The girl's voice cracked on the last word. Elena pulled her into a hug that smelled like strawberry shampoo and cafeteria pancakes, then sat her at the table. For the next 43 minutes, they rebuilt the entire display together. Elena added columns of numbers she'd pulled from the Cayman filings, redacted just enough to look like a kid's science project. At the bottom, she printed in careful block letters, "What the hospital doesn't want you to measure." Sophie beamed. When the bus came, Elena watched her daughter disappear down the street and felt the first real crack in the wall she'd built around her past. She spent the afternoon in the storage unit. The footlocker finally opened at 4:12 p.m. Inside were the old flight logs, the original purchase documents for the clinic itself, signed by her under a trust no one had ever traced, and a single flash drive containing every mission recording from 2012 to 2018. She removed only one item, a small metal tin that once held .50 cal links. Inside it now lived the dog tag when she wasn't wearing it. She set the tin on the locker lid like a promise. Kane arrived at 2200 on the dot. He carried a battered laptop and a thumb drive of his own. They worked under the bare bulb until 1:37 a.m., voices low, passing the same folded napkin back and forth as they scribbled new account numbers. Every time one of them hit a dead end, Elena would touch the dog tag and the rhythm would return. By the time they locked the unit, they had enough to force a forensic audit, if they could get it in front of the right eyes before Lang buried it. 6 days left. The following shift brought another perfectly timed crisis. A board member's wife arrived in active labor at 10:22 a.m., Lang presiding again, residents circling like crows. The delivery stalled. Lang's orders grew sharper, his Italian loafers squeaking on the tile every time he paced. Elena stepped in at the exact moment the fetal monitor flatlined. She delivered the baby herself in 47 seconds, quiet, precise, the way she used to hot extract wounded operators under fire. The infant cried at 10:29. The mother wept. Lang's face went the color of old paper. That evening he found her in the stairwell, alone. "I watched the tape," he said. "No Patek today. Just a plain watch and something almost human in his eyes. You moved like someone who's done it 1,000 times when lives actually depended on it. I may have misjudged the depth of your experience." Elena said nothing. She simply pulled the folded business card from her pocket, the one he'd left on her hood, and handed it back to him. 6 days, Dr. Lang. The auction is in 6 days. Bring better numbers." She left him standing on the landing, the echo of her footsteps mixing with the distant rattle of meal carts and the faint metallic clink of the dog tag beneath her scrubs. Day 17 began with rain hammering the hospital windows. Elena arrived to find the entire pediatric wing buzzing with rumor. An anonymous tip had triggered a state audit. Lang was in back-to-back meetings. Kane caught her eye in the corridor and gave the smallest nod. The countdown ticked visibly on the large dry erase board in the nurse's station. Someone had written funding deadline, 5 days in red marker. Every time she passed it, Elena felt the old rotor wash in her chest. The new mini-crisis arrived at 2:17 p.m. in the form of a 5-year-old girl seizing in the waiting room. No parent, no records, just a social worker who looked ready to collapse. Lang was across town at the bank. Elena took the case solo. She recognized the rare metabolic disorder within 90 seconds, something she'd seen twice in forward operating bases when local children were brought in malnourished. She ordered the exact cocktail of medications from memory, dosages precise to the gram. The seizures stopped at 2:41. The little girl opened her eyes and asked for juice in a voice so small it cracked something loose behind Elena's ribs. She sat with the child until shift change, the dog tag warm against her skin. The folded napkin from Kane now tucked inside the tin back at the storage unit like a talisman, making its slow journey home. For days remained. Each shift now felt like another rotation of the same wheel. New crisis, quiet reversal, Lang's polished mask slipping another millimeter. The boardroom grew louder with whispers. Kane's limp improved enough that he started shadowing her on rounds. Never speaking her old name in public, only the occasional specter when no one else could hear. Sophie brought home a blue ribbon from the regional science fair preliminary round. The poster now carrying real weight because of the quiet data her mother had slipped in at 3 a.m. the night before. Elena kept the footlocker closed, but the tin traveled with her now. Small, heavy, always in the left pocket of her scrubs. Every time she touched it, the desert came back for half a second. The smell of JP-8, the chatter of rotors, the calm voice that had once guided 287 missions through hell and home again. 3 days until the auction. The rain kept falling. The hospital corridors smelled of wet wool and antiseptic. And somewhere in the executive suite, Lang was rewriting the final proposal that would either save the children's wing or sell it to the highest bidder. Elena Voss, janitor's daughter, single mother, former ghost, felt the old rotor wash build behind her eyes every time she walked past the dry erase board. The silence that had protected her for 6 years was no longer cracking. It was roaring. The rain drummed harder against the hospital windows as the clock hit 6:12 a.m. 3 days until the auction. Elena's scrubs were still damp from the sprint across the parking lot. She pushed open the door to the supply closet on sublevel 2, the one the night crew used for overflow, and found it ankle-deep in standing water. Pipes had burst sometime after midnight. The smell of wet plaster and mildew hit her like a backhand. Lang stood in the doorway behind her in a charcoal Brioni suit, Italian shoes already speckled with droplets. This wing floods every storm now. Another reason the board wants it gone. You're on janitorial rotation today, Voss. Mop it. The real staff has patience. He didn't wait for a reply. The door clicked shut. Elena stared at the rising water for 3 full seconds. Then she reached into her left pocket, fingers closing around the small tin. The dog tag inside rattled once against the folded napkin Kane had given her. She took a breath that tasted of rust and JP-8 ghosts, rolled up her sleeves, and went to work. Day -3. She had the entire basement cleared and dried by 10:47. No one saw her reroute the main line with 2 zip ties, a length of surgical tubing, and a torque wrench she borrowed from maintenance without asking. When the facilities director arrived at noon, the floor was bone dry, the leak marked and isolated. He blinked at the neat rows of buckets she had lined against the wall like soldiers on parade. Lang received the report while sipping a double espresso in the executive lounge. His Patek caught the light as he set the cup down harder than necessary. The mask slipped another millimeter. But the real test came at 2:14 that afternoon. A 6-year-old boy coded in the PICU. Cardiac arrhythmia, the kind that didn't respond to the standard protocol. The attending physician froze. Lang happened to be on the floor doing one of his walkthroughs, tie-perfect, voice-clipped. Call the crash team. Again. Elena was pushing a laundry cart past the glass when she heard the flatline tone. She left the cart where it stood, walked straight into the room, and spoke for the first time in front of the entire whitecoat circle. Push 1 milligram of AP, then prepare 2 grams of magnesium sulfate. He's got long QT from the new antibiotic batch. I saw the labs at 1:30. Lang's head snapped toward her. You're a janitor, Voss. Step back. She didn't. The dog tag burned against her sternum. The boy's monitor flatlined for 4 more seconds. Then the magnesium hit and the rhythm snapped back into sinus. The room exhaled as one. The attending stared at her like she had grown wings. Kane, watching from the hallway, allowed himself the smallest smile. Lang's jaw flexed once. He adjusted his cuff links and left without another word. That night, the boardroom whispers grew teeth. 2 days until the auction.
Elena Barelai slipped.
The tin stayed on her nightstand beside Sophie's blue ribbon. At 4:07 a.m. she unfolded the napkin again, traced the faint ink of Cain's old call sign written in desert dust years ago. She refolded it like a prayer and slid it back inside the metal. The smell of rotor wash wouldn't leave her sinuses. Morning rounds brought the next mini-crisis. The hospital's main pharmacy inventory system had glitched overnight. Critical pediatric chemo doses were listed as out of stock, even though the sealed crates sat untouched in the loading dock. 3 kids on the oncology floor were due their infusions by 9 o'clock. Without them, the auction wouldn't matter. Those children wouldn't make it to the weekend. Lang called an emergency huddle at 7:45 wearing a fresh navy suit, Patek flashing every time he checked his watch. The system says 0. Corporate won't release emergency funds until after the auction clears. We prioritize. 2 of the 3 get theirs today. The 3rd waits. Elena stood at the back of the circle in borrowed scrubs, tin heavy in her pocket. She waited until the silence stretched thin enough to cut. Crates 4471 through 4473 are sitting in Bay 4. I logged the barcode scans myself at 3 a.m. The system just needs a manual override. The override code is still the original one from when this place opened in '98. Lang laughed once, sharp. And you know that how? She met his eyes. Because I helped write the original inventory protocol. Before I disappeared, the room went dead quiet. Cain coughed into his fist to hide the grin. Lang's polished mask cracked another visible inch. He waved a hand like swatting a fly. Fine. Someone checked the dock. They checked. The crates were exactly where she said. The infusions started on time. 2 grateful mothers hugged her in the hallway while Lang watched from the far end of the corridor, arms folded so tight the Brioni seemed strained. One day until the auction. The rain had stopped, but the air still felt soaked. Elena's limp from the old injury had returned with the damp. She kept moving anyway. The tin never left her pocket now. Every time her fingers brushed it, she heard the rotors again. Felt the weight of 287 missions pressing on her shoulders like a familiar hand. At 11:19 a.m., the real storm arrived. A courier delivered the final sealed bid package to the executive suite. Lang opened it in front of 3 board members. His face went the color of old paper. The highest bidder, a private equity group known for stripping hospitals for parts, had doubled their previous offer. The children's wing would be converted into luxury suites within 90 days of closing. The attached letter was blunt. Any staff who resisted would be terminated immediately. Lang walked the letter down to the nurse's station himself. He dropped it on the counter where Elena was restocking gloves. His voice was lower now, almost human. You've been playing games, Voss. Small wins. Little miracles. But this is over tomorrow at 10 a.m. in the main auditorium. The entire staff will watch the gavel fall. After that, you can take your little tin box and go back to whatever hole you crawled out of. He turned to leave. Elena spoke without looking up. Tell the board I'll be there. Front row.
Lang pauset.
For the first time, the Patek on his wrist seemed too heavy. He left without answering. 19 hours to the auction. The hospital buzzed like a kicked hive. Sophie stayed home from school so she could sit with Cain in the cafeteria and color quietly while her mother moved through her final shift like a ghost in scrubs. Every few minutes someone would stop Elena in the hall. A whispered thank you. A nod. One of the older nurses pressed a child's drawing into her hand. A crayon helicopter with the word Spectre written underneath in careful block letters. Elena tucked the drawing into the tin beside the napkin. The dog tag clicked against it once. A small sound that somehow carried the weight of desert nights and medevac runs, and the day she had walked away from everything to keep her daughter safe. At 2:37 p.m., another small reversal played out in the break room. A junior resident who had mocked her for weeks cornered her by the coffee machine. I don't know who you are, but the kid from yesterday, the one with long cutie, he asked for you by name, said the lady with the helicopter voice saved him. I looked it up, There used to be a pilot called Spectre. 287 missions. Disappeared 6 years ago. That can't be you, right? Elena stirred her coffee once. The spoon clinked against the side of the mug. Drink your coffee, doctor. Some questions are louder when they stay unanswered. She left him standing there, mouth half open. The tin in her pocket felt warmer than the cup in her hand. 14 hours to the auction. Lang sat alone in his office at 9:04 p.m. Tie loosened for the first time anyone could remember. The Brioni jacket hung on the back of his chair like shed skin. On his desk lay the courier's letter, the revised bid, and a single printed page that had arrived anonymously an hour earlier. It was an old mission log. Flight number 183. Date redacted. Pilot callsign Spectre. Co-pilot. A young medic named Lang. He hadn't remembered her face until that moment. The desert, the rotors, the night they brought 38 wounded home through AAA fire. He had frozen on the stick. She had taken over without a word, voice calm in his ear the entire time. They made it. He received a commendation. She received silence because the mission had never officially happened. Lang rubbed his eyes. The Patek read 9:17. He picked up his phone, hesitated, then set it down again. The apology still felt too big for his throat. 12 hours. Elena stood on the roof of the parking garage at 10:22, wind tugging at her hair. The city lights blurred in the low clouds. She took the tin out, opened it, and held the folded napkin to her nose. The faint smell of desert dust was almost gone now, replaced by the clean scent of Sophie's crayons and hospital antiseptic. The dog tag caught the security light and flashed once, gold against the dark. She closed the tin. The rotor wash in her chest had become something steadier. Not rage, not even hope, just forward motion. 11 hours to the auction. Inside the children's wing, the night lights glowed soft blue. A little girl who had coded 4 days earlier slept peacefully, juice cup still clutched in one small fist. Down the hall, the boy with long cutie dreamed without monitors. In the break room, the junior resident stared at the crayon helicopter drawing someone had pinned to the bulletin board. And in the executive suite, Lang loosened his tie another inch, stared at the mission log, and whispered a name he hadn't spoken aloud in 6 years. Spectre. The boardroom clock ticked louder with every minute. The tin in Elena's left pocket grew heavier. The napkin inside it waited, folded tight, carrying 6 years of silence and the promise of one last rotation of the wheel. 9 hours until the gavel fell. The gavel fell at precisely 8:14 a.m. in the main auction hall of the old Federal Building on 14th and Commerce. 143 seats, every one of them filled. Hospital board members in pressed navy, donors clutching paddles numbered in gold leaf, and Elena's former colleagues from the pediatric wing crammed into the back rows like they were attending an execution. The air smelled of fresh coffee, polished oak, and the faint metallic bite of nervous sweat. Elena stood at the podium in her faded navy scrubs, name tag still pinned crooked from the night shift. The tin rested in her left pocket like a heartbeat. Lang sat in the front row, seat 18C, Patek hidden beneath a plain gray cuff for the first time in years. His hands trembled once against the mission log folded on his lap. The auctioneer cleared his throat. Lot 47. The entire West Wing pediatric expansion. Current high bid, $78 million from Horizon Health Partners. Do I hear 80? A ripple moved through the room. Horizon's CEO, a man named Richard Voss in a Brioni suit the color of wet asphalt, leaned back with the smug half-smile that had once dismissed Elena in this very building. Scrap metal and broken dreams. He had called her proposal 6 years earlier in the same boardroom upstairs. You're useless here. Take your crayon drawings and go. 80 million became 84, then 89. The numbers climbed with mechanical precision, each bid announced like hammer strikes. Elena never raised her paddle. She simply waited. At 93 million, the room began to murmur. Voss's smile tightened. He adjusted his silk tie, the one with the tiny embroidered crest, and signaled again. 95. The auctioneer paused. 95 million. Going once. Elena finally lifted her hand. Not high, just enough. The room fell into a stunned quiet. The auctioneer's voice cracked slightly. New bidder, $112 million. Gasps. Paddles froze mid-air. Voss turned slowly, eyes narrowing at the woman in scrubs. Recognition hit him like rotor wash. His mouth opened, closed. Elena spoke into the microphone, voice steady. The same calm tone she had used that night over the desert when the stick had frozen in Lang's hands. Final bid, $112 million, backed by the original charter documents of this hospital, signed in 1978 by my grandfather, Dr. Thomas Langford, the man who built the West Wing before it was ever sold off in pieces. She reached into her pocket, pulled out the tin, and opened it. The folded napkin caught the overhead lights. On it, in faded pencil, were the original architectural lines her grandfather had sketched on a C-130 cargo plane in 1977. Next to it lay the dog tag. Bector. Lang stood up. Every head swiveled. He walked to the podium without being asked, mission log in hand. The board members who had laughed at Elena's fantasy helicopter medevac program now stared at the man whose signature appeared on the original classified flight orders. He placed the log beside the tin. Page after page of redacted missions. Flight 183 highlighted in fresh yellow. Co-pilot, Medic Lang. The same last name. The room inhaled as one. Voss's face drained of color. The Brioni suddenly looked too tight across his shoulders. Elena continued, each word measured. The hospital never lost money on the West Wing. It was starved on purpose so Horizon could buy it cheap. My grandfather's trust has been buying back shares quietly for 6 years. Every anonymous donation, every midnight crayon drawing pinned to a bulletin board, every child who coded and came back because a helicopter got there in time. All of it led here. She looked directly at the back rows where her old co-workers sat frozen. The junior resident who had once been told to stop wasting time on impossible airlifts. The night nurse who had cried in the stairwell after Elena was escorted out with a cardboard box. This wing belongs to the kids again, not to balance sheets, not to private equity. 112 million. Final. The gavel came down so hard the sound cracked like a rifle shot. Sold. For 10 full seconds, the only noise was the low hum of the air conditioning and the distant siren of an incoming ambulance 6 floors below. Then the clapping started. Slow at first, then thunderous. The same people who had watched her walk out in disgrace were now on their feet, some wiping their eyes. Voss remained seated. His hands shook so badly his auction paddle clattered to the floor. The private apology came 43 minutes later in the empty green room behind the stage. Voss stood there without the jacket now, sleeves rolled up, the Patek still gleaming but somehow smaller. Lang stood beside Elena, silent, the dog tag now hanging from her neck. I was wrong, Voss said. His voice cracked on the first real word he had spoken without performance in years. I saw numbers. You saw lives. I mocked the only person who still remembered why this hospital was built. He looked at the napkin Elena still held. That smell. It's the desert, isn't it? The one you flew through when my father was one of those 38 wounded you brought home. Elena said nothing. She simply folded the napkin once more and slid it back into the tin. Voss swallowed.
I'm sorry, Elena.
For every time I called you scrap. For every time I told the board you were finished. I was the one who was finished. I just didn't know it. She met his eyes. The rotor wash in her chest had gone quiet. Then make it right out there. The public apology came at 10:07 a.m. on the same stage where the auction had ended. Microphones still hot. Every board member, every donor, every nurse and doctor still present. Voss stepped to the podium without notes. He removed the patek from his wrist, set it down with a soft click, and spoke. 6 years ago, I stood in this building and humiliated a woman who had saved my own father's life on a mission that never officially existed. I called her proposal scrap metal. I told her to take her box and go. Today, she bought back what should never have been sold. I was arrogant, I was blind, and I was wrong. His voice thickened. Elena Voss is the reason this children's wing will stay a children's wing. She is the reason more of our kids will sleep without monitors. I apologize to her, publicly, unreservedly, and if she'll allow it, I will spend the next 6 years trying to earn back the trust one threw away in 90 seconds. He stepped back. The silence that followed felt eternal. Elena walked forward. She placed the tin on the podium between them. The napkin, the dog tag, the mission log. Then she did something no one expected. She took Voss's trembling hand, shook it once, and spoke loud enough for the microphones to carry every word. "Forward motion," she said. "That's all any of us get." The applause that answered wasn't polite. It was grateful, real. 3 months later, the West Wing reopened under its original name, the Langford Rotary Wing Pediatric Center. The first helicopter to land on the new roof at 2:14 a.m. carried a 6-year-old burn victim from a house fire on the edge of the county. Elena was there to receive her. So was Lang, now in plain khakis, no tie, working the stick again for the first time since the desert. In the children's playroom, the crayon helicopter drawings multiplied until they covered an entire wall. One of them, done by the little girl who had once clutched a juice cup after coding, showed a woman in scrubs standing beside a man with a dog tag. Above them both, written in careful childish letters, Spectre and Lang. Together again. Voss kept his word. He sold his Horizon stock at a loss and now chairs the hospital's new ethics board. He still wears Italian shoes, but they're scuffed now. Earned. Elena keeps the tin on the dashboard of her personal vehicle, a dusty Jeep that smells faintly of crayons and desert dust no matter how many times she cleans it. Some nights she opens it, holds the napkin to her nose, and remembers the sound of rotors cutting through AAA fire. The fear, the silence that followed, the decision to keep moving anyway. The debt is paid. Not with vengeance, but with every child who gets to grow up because one nurse refused to let a wing die. And in the quiet hours, when the city lights blur against low clouds and another siren rises in the distance, she understands the simplest truth of all. The most powerful thing any of us can do is remember who we were before they told us we were nothing, and then prove them wrong without ever raising our voice. Some rotations of the wheel don't bring you back to where you started. They bring you forward, exactly where you were always meant to be.